Hello there, and welcome to my channel, where we explore the wonders of our world at a pace that won't keep you tossing and turning. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight, whether you're settling into bed after a long day, curled up in your favorite reading chair, or simply looking for a gentle journey through the mysteries of science. Tonight, we're embarking on a quiet expedition into one of nature's most elegant processes, photosynthesis. It's the silent miracle happening all around us, from the houseplant on your windowsill to the towering redwoods in distant forests. It's the process that quite literally turns sunlight into life, and without it, well, none of us would be here to ponder it. Now, I do hope this exploration won't be so fascinating that it keeps you wide awake, though if it does, at least you'll drift off with some beautiful science swirling in your thoughts. Before we begin this gentle journey, I'd be ever so grateful if you tapped that like button and perhaps subscribed to join our growing community of sleepy scientists. It helps others find these peaceful moments of wonder too. I'm curious, where in the world are you listening from tonight? Are you tucked under blankets in a cozy bedroom in Copenhagen at midnight? Or perhaps it's early evening in your living room in Melbourne? Leave a comment and let me know. There's something rather lovely about knowing our little scientific family stretches across time zones and continents, all united by curiosity and the gentle pull toward rest. So take a deep breath, let your shoulders relax, and prepare to discover how a simple leaf performs what might be the most important chemistry experiment on Earth. We'll wander through this story slowly, like sunlight filtering through forest canopy, because the best science, like the best sleep, shouldn't be rushed. Picture this for a moment. You're lying beneath an old oak tree on a warm summer afternoon. The leaves above you rustle softly in the breeze, dappling the ground with shifting patterns of light and shadow. What you're witnessing, though, you might not realize it is one of the most extraordinary factories in existence. Every single leaf above your head is quietly, efficiently, and ceaselessly transforming the very air you breathe, and the sunlight warming your skin into the building blocks of life itself. This process has a rather grand name, photosynthesis. It comes from Greek words meaning light and putting together, which is beautifully appropriate because that's precisely what it does. It takes light from the sun and puts it together with simple molecules to create something far more complex and wonderful, the sugars that fuel nearly every living thing on our planet. But here's what makes this truly remarkable. Photosynthesis isn't just happening in that oak tree above you. It's occurring in the grass beneath your back, in the algae floating in distant oceans, in the tiny moss growing on garden walls, and even in microscopic organisms you'll never see. Every day, plants and other photosynthetic organisms capture more energy from the sun than all of human civilization uses in an entire year. They do this silently, without fanfare, without needing maintenance or fuel costs, just sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide from the air. And the best part? As they perform this solar-powered alchemy, they release oxygen as what scientists rather charmingly call a waste product. That's right, the oxygen you're breathing right now, the oxygen that keeps your cells happy and your thoughts flowing, is essentially plant waste. It's the most beneficial garbage in the universe. To truly appreciate photosynthesis, we need to understand what makes it so special. Most of the processes that power life, digestion, metabolism, even the way our brains work, involve breaking things down. We take complex molecules and tear them apart to release energy. It's a bit like burning logs in a fireplace. You start with something organized and end up with heat, light, and ashes. Photosynthesis works in the opposite direction. It's constructive rather than destructive. It takes simple, low-energy molecules, carbon dioxide and water, and uses the energy from sunlight to build them into complex, energy-rich sugars. It's like taking ashes and somehow reassembling them into logs, except these logs are made of pure, concentrated sunshine. This might sound magical, and in many ways it is. The process requires an intricate dance of molecules, a carefully orchestrated series of chemical reactions that would make any human engineer weep with envy. And it all happens inside structures so small that millions of them could fit on the head of a pin. Let's start our exploration with the most visible players in this story, plants. When we think of photosynthesis, we usually picture leaves, those flat green solar panels that trees and flowers wear so elegantly. But photosynthesis actually happens in many different forms of life. Algae in the ocean perform it. So do certain bacteria that have been practicing this craft for billions of years, longer than any plant. Even some animals, like sea slugs, have figured out how to steal photosynthetic machinery from their prey and use it for themselves. Nature, as always, is wonderfully creative. But since leaves are what most of us encounter daily, let's begin there. Hold a leaf up to the light, sometime any leaf will do. Notice how it's thin enough to let light through, but thick enough to contain all the molecular machinery it needs. The green color you see comes from chlorophyll, perhaps the most important molecule you've never properly met. Chlorophyll is what scientists call a pigment, which simply means it absorbs some colors of light and reflects others. Chlorophyll absorbs red and blue light very efficiently, but it reflects green light back to your eyes. That's why plants look green to us. We're seeing the light they don't want, the wavelengths they can't use. It's rather like judging a person's food preferences by looking at what they leave on their plate. But chlorophyll does something far more impressive than just absorb light. When a photon, a tiny packet of light energy, strikes a chlorophyll molecule, something extraordinary happens. The energy from that photon gets captured and begins a cascade of reactions that will ultimately turn carbon dioxide and water into sugar and oxygen. It's the molecular equivalent of catching lightning in a bottle. This process happens inside tiny structures called chloroplasts, which are scattered throughout the leaf like microscopic solar panels. Each chloroplast contains stacks of membranes called thylakoids, and it's here that the initial magic happens. The thylakoids are arranged like coins in a stack, creating a large surface area for capturing light, while maintaining the precise organization needed for the complex chemistry that follows. Inside these thylakoids, chlorophyll molecules are arranged in intricate arrays along with other helper molecules. They work together like a perfectly tuned orchestra, with each molecule playing its part in the grand symphony of photosynthesis. When light hits this molecular orchestra, it sets off a chain reaction that scientists have spent decades trying to fully understand. The process begins when light energy excites electrons in the chlorophyll molecules. These energized electrons are like tiny batteries, charged up and ready to do work. But plants can't use this energy directly. It needs to be captured and stored in a form the plant can use later. This is where the process gets truly elegant. The excited electrons are passed along a chain of molecules, each one capturing a bit of the energy and using it to pump hydrogen ions across the thylakoid membrane. This creates what scientists call a proton gradient, essentially, a molecular dam with higher concentration of hydrogen ions on one side than the other. The potential energy stored in this gradient is then used to power the production of ATP, the universal energy currency of life. ATP adenosine triphosphate, if you want to be formal about it, is like biological money. Every living thing uses it to power chemical reactions, move molecules around, and basically do all the work of being alive. Plants use the ATP produced during photosynthesis to power the next stage of the process, actually building sugar molecules from carbon dioxide. This next stage happens in a different part of the chloroplast, in the stroma, the fluid-filled space surrounding the thylakoids. Here, carbon dioxide molecules from the air are captured and incorporated into larger molecules through a process called the Calvin cycle. It's named after Melvin Calvin, who figured out how it works and won a Nobel Prize for his efforts. The Calvin cycle is like a molecular assembly line. Carbon dioxide molecules are grabbed from the air and attached to existing molecules in the plant. Through a series of chemical transformations powered by the ATP and other energy-carrying molecules produced in the light reactions, these carbon atoms are eventually assembled into glucose, a simple sugar that serves as both food and building material for the plant. This might sound straightforward, but it's anything but simple. The Calvin cycle involves more than a dozen different chemical reactions, each catalyzed by a specific enzyme. These enzymes are like molecular machines, each designed to facilitate one particular chemical transformation. They work with extraordinary precision and efficiency, processing thousands of molecules per second. The glucose produced by photosynthesis serves multiple purposes for the plant. Some of it is used immediately as fuel, broken down to release energy for growth, maintenance, and reproduction. Some is converted into starch and stored for later use, like a plant savings account. And some is used as raw material to build other molecules the plant needs. Cellulose for structural support, proteins for enzymes, and countless other compounds. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about photosynthesis is its sheer scale. Every year, plants and other photosynthetic organisms capture approximately 100 billion tons of carbon from the atmosphere and convert it into organic molecules. To put that in perspective, that's roughly equivalent to the mass of 200 million blue whales worth of carbon being processed annually by the world's green factories. This massive conversion of atmospheric carbon dioxide into organic matter is what feeds virtually every ecosystem on Earth. Even carnivores depend on photosynthesis, because their prey either eat plants directly or eat other animals that ultimately depend on plants. The energy flowing through food webs can be traced back to photosynthesis, like following a river to its source. And as all this carbon fixation is happening, plants are simultaneously releasing oxygen as a byproduct. Approximately 330 billion tons of oxygen are released into the atmosphere each year through photosynthesis. Every second breath you take comes from photosynthesis happening right now somewhere on Earth. The oxygen in our atmosphere is actually a relatively recent addition to Earth's story. For the first billion years or so of our planet's existence, there was virtually no oxygen in the air. It was the evolution of photosynthesis, first in ancient bacteria and later in plants, that gradually filled our atmosphere with the oxygen that makes complex life possible. This transformation wasn't immediate or gentle. The rise of oxygen in Earth's atmosphere was actually catastrophic for many forms of life that had evolved in the oxygen-free world. Oxygen is highly reactive. That's what makes it useful for powering our cells, but it's also what makes it dangerous. Many early life forms were poisoned by the increasing oxygen levels. Scientists call this event the Great Oxygenation Event, though it might more accurately be called the Great Oxygen Catastrophe from the perspective of the organisms that didn't survive it. But this catastrophe paved the way for more complex forms of life. Oxygen-breathing organisms could extract far more energy from their food than their predecessors. This additional energy made possible the evolution of larger, more complex cells, and eventually multicellular organisms like plants and animals. So when you breathe in oxygen, you're participating in a process that began billions of years ago with the first photosynthetic bacteria. You're benefiting from an atmospheric transformation that took hundreds of millions of years to complete. Every breath connects you to the ancient history of life on Earth and to the countless plants and algae that are continuing this process today. The story of photosynthesis is still being written. Scientists continue to discover new aspects of how this process works, and engineers are trying to learn from plants to develop artificial photosynthesis systems that could help address climate change and energy needs. But even as we uncover more details about the molecular mechanisms, the fundamental wonder remains unchanged. Here is a process that captures the energy of our nearest star and transforms it into the chemical bonds that power life itself. It happens silently, continuously, all around us. It connects the inorganic world of sunlight and minerals to the organic world of growth and metabolism. It bridges the gap between the physics of light and the chemistry of life. As you lie there in the gathering dusk, perhaps watching the last light filter through your window, consider this. Photosynthesis is happening even now in the houseplant on your shelf, in the tree outside your window, in microscopic algae floating in distant seas. It's a process so fundamental that it shapes not just individual organisms, but entire planetary systems, the composition of our atmosphere, the temperature of our climate, even the color of our world. But to truly understand photosynthesis, we need to zoom in closer, past the rustling leaves and swaying branches, past even the individual cells, down to the molecular level where the real magic happens. Because photosynthesis isn't just one process, it's actually two interconnected sets of reactions that scientists poetically call the light reactions and the dark reactions, though both can happen simultaneously in the presence of sunlight. The light reactions are where photosynthesis begins, its delicate dance with electromagnetic radiation. Picture the surface of a leaf as a vast solar farm, but instead of rigid panels, imagine billions of tiny antennae, each one perfectly tuned to capture specific wavelengths of light. These antennae are chlorophyll molecules, and they're embedded in membrane systems that are folded and stacked with an elegance that would make origami masters envious. When sunlight strikes these molecular antennae, something remarkable occurs at the quantum level. Photons, those massless particles of light that have traveled 93 million miles from the sun in just 8 minutes, collide with electrons in the chlorophyll molecules. These electrons, normally content to orbit their atoms in predictable patterns, suddenly find themselves energized, excited, bumped up to higher energy states, like students who've had too much coffee. But plants are remarkably efficient. They can't let this energy simply dissipate as heat that would be wasteful. Instead, they've evolved an intricate system to capture and channel this excited energy. The energized electrons are passed along what scientists call an electron transport chain, a molecular bucket brigade, where each molecule in the chain is perfectly positioned to accept electrons from its neighbor and pass them on to the next. As electrons flow through this chain, their energy is gradually harvested and used to power molecular pumps. These pumps work tirelessly to move hydrogen ions, protons, across the thylakoid membrane, creating what's essentially a molecular battery. On one side of the membrane, protons accumulate like water behind a dam. The potential energy stored in this proton gradient is enormous at the molecular scale. This is where one of biology's most elegant machines comes into play: ATP synthase. If you could shrink down to molecular size and watch this enzyme work, you'd witness something that looks remarkably like a tiny turbine. As protons flow back across the membrane through ATP synthase, they cause part of the enzyme to rotate, literally spinning like a molecular motor. This rotation drives the synthesis of ATP, the energy currency that powers virtually every biological process on Earth. The beauty of this system lies in its efficiency and elegance. Plants have essentially learned to harness the quantum mechanical properties of light to drive classical mechanical motion at the molecular level. They've built biological machines that operate on principles engineers are only beginning to fully understand and appreciate. But capturing light energy is only half the photosynthetic story. The other half involves one of the most important chemical processes on our planet: carbon fixation. This is where plants take carbon dioxide from the air, the same carbon dioxide we exhale with every breath, and transform it into the organic molecules that form the backbone of all life. Carbon dioxide might seem like a simple molecule, and in many ways it is. It's just one carbon atom bonded to two oxygen atoms. But getting that carbon atom out of this stable molecule and into a form that can be used to build sugars requires considerable chemical finesse. Plants accomplish this through the Calvin cycle, named after the scientist who unraveled its mysteries using radioactive carbon tracers and paper chromatography in what was essentially molecular detective work. The Calvin cycle operates in the stroma, the fluid-filled interior of chloroplasts. Here, carbon dioxide molecules are grabbed from the air by an enzyme called RuBisCO ribulose bisphosphate carboxylase oxygenase, if you want its full name. RuBisCO is probably the most abundant protein on Earth, and for good reason. It's the molecular gateway between the inorganic carbon in our atmosphere and the organic carbon that makes up living things. But RuBisCO has a quirky personality. It's not particularly fast, processing only a few molecules of carbon dioxide per second. It's also not entirely reliable. Sometimes it grabs oxygen instead of carbon dioxide, leading to a wasteful process called photorespiration. Yet despite these apparent flaws, RuBisCO is absolutely essential. Every carbon atom in your body was likely processed by RuBisCO at some point, incorporated into a plant, and then passed along the food chain until it became part of you. The Calvin cycle is like a molecular recycling center. It takes the carbon dioxide captured by RuBisCO and, through a series of chemical transformations, incorporates it into increasingly complex molecules. These reactions require energy, which comes from the ATP and other energy-carrying molecules produced by the light reactions. It's a perfect example of biological cooperation, two different processes working together to achieve something neither could accomplish alone. The end product of this molecular collaboration is glucose, a simple sugar that serves as both fuel and building material for plants. But glucose is just the beginning. Plants can take this basic sugar and transform it into countless other molecules: cellulose for structural support, starch for energy storage, proteins for enzymes, oils for seeds, and the myriad other compounds that make up the botanical world. This transformation of simple inorganic molecules into complex organic ones is called primary production, and it forms the foundation of virtually every ecosystem on Earth. Plants are the primary producers, the organisms that capture energy from the sun and make it available to the rest of the living world. Everything else, from bacteria to blue whales, depends on this process, either directly or indirectly. The scale of primary production is staggering. Every year, plants and other photosynthetic organisms capture approximately 100 billion tons of carbon from the atmosphere. To put that in perspective, imagine a pile of coal weighing as much as 500 billion tons of dry wood. That's roughly equivalent to the amount of carbon that gets fixed into organic molecules annually through photosynthesis. This massive conversion of atmospheric carbon into living matter is what allows ecosystems to exist. Herbivores eat plants, carnivores eat herbivores, decomposers break down dead organisms, and the nutrients cycle through the system. But it all starts with photosynthesis, with the quiet alchemy of turning sunlight into sugar. And as this carbon fixation proceeds, oxygen is released as what scientists call a byproduct, though calling it a byproduct hardly does justice to its importance. The oxygen released by photosynthesis is what makes our planet habitable for complex life. Every other breath you take comes from photosynthesis happening right now, somewhere on Earth. The oxygen molecules entering your lungs might have been released by a tree in your neighborhood, algae in a distant ocean, or microscopic cyanobacteria in a pond you'll never see. This oxygen production has literally transformed our planet. Early Earth had virtually no oxygen in its atmosphere. The air was filled with methane, ammonia, and other gases that would be toxic to most modern life forms. It was the evolution of photosynthesis, first in ancient bacteria and later in plants, that gradually filled our atmosphere with oxygen. This transformation took place over hundreds of millions of years, but its effects were revolutionary. Oxygen is highly reactive. That's what makes it useful for powering cellular metabolism, but it also made it initially toxic to many early life forms. The rise of atmospheric oxygen caused what scientists call the Great Oxygenation Event, which was catastrophic for anaerobic organisms, but opened up new evolutionary possibilities for life forms that could harness oxygen's energy-releasing potential. The evolution of oxygen-breathing organisms led to a dramatic increase in the energy available to living things. Organisms that could use oxygen to break down food molecules could extract far more energy from their meals than their anaerobic predecessors. This additional energy made possible the evolution of larger, more complex cells, and eventually multicellular organisms like plants and animals. So when you breathe in oxygen, you're participating in a process that connects you to billions of years of evolutionary history. You're using a gas that was toxic to early life, but became the foundation for complex organisms. You're breathing the waste product of photosynthesis, but this waste product is what makes your existence possible. The story becomes even more intricate when you consider the global cycles that photosynthesis drives. Carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, all of these elements cycle through ecosystems, and photosynthesis plays a crucial role in these cycles. Plants don't just remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, they also influence water cycles through transpiration, affect soil chemistry through root secretions, and modify local climates through their effects on temperature and humidity. Consider the water cycle, for instance. Plants absorb water through their roots and release it through their leaves in a process called transpiration. A single large oak tree can transpire hundreds of gallons of water per day during the growing season. This water vapor rises into the atmosphere, forms clouds, and eventually falls as precipitation. In many ecosystems, a significant fraction of local rainfall comes from water that was transpired by plants. This means that photosynthesis influences not just the chemical composition of our atmosphere, but also weather patterns and climate. Forests create their own microclimates, cooling the air through transpiration and creating conditions that favor continued forest growth. When forests are cleared, these local climate effects are lost, sometimes permanently altering regional weather patterns. The interconnections extend even further. The organic molecules produced by photosynthesis don't just feed plants, they feed entire soil ecosystems. Plant roots secrete sugars, amino acids, and other organic compounds into the soil, feeding bacteria and fungi that form complex partnerships with plant roots. These soil organisms help plants acquire nutrients, protect them from pathogens, and even communicate chemical signals between different plants. Some of these partnerships are so intimate that plants and their microbial partners have essentially become single organisms. Lichens, for example, are composite organisms made up of fungi and photosynthetic algae or cyanobacteria living together. The photosynthetic partner provides food, while the fungal partner provides structure and protection. These partnerships have allowed organisms to colonize environments that neither could survive alone, from bare rock faces to Arctic tundra. The sophistication of photosynthetic systems continues to amaze scientists as new details are discovered. Recently, researchers have found that plants can actually adjust their photosynthetic machinery in real time, optimizing their light harvesting efficiency based on changing light conditions. They can redirect energy flows, modify enzyme concentrations, and even change the organization of their molecular antennae to maximize photosynthetic output. Plants have also evolved remarkably diverse strategies for dealing with the challenges of photosynthesis. In hot, dry environments, many plants use a process called CAM photosynthesis, crassulacean acid metabolism, which allows them to open their pores and collect carbon dioxide at night, when it's cooler and humidity is higher, then use this stored carbon dioxide for photosynthesis during the day when their pores are closed to conserve water. Other plants, particularly grasses and some crop species, use C4 photosynthesis, which involves capturing carbon dioxide in specialized cells and concentrating it around RuBisCO to improve the enzyme's efficiency. These plants can photosynthesize more efficiently in hot conditions and often grow faster than plants using the standard C3 photosynthetic pathway. These variations remind us that photosynthesis isn't a single monolithic process, but rather a family of related processes that have evolved to work in different environmental conditions. From the frigid waters of polar seas to scorching desert surfaces, photosynthetic organisms have found ways to capture sunlight and transform it into the chemical bonds that power life. As you lie there listening to this gentle exploration, consider that the plant on your windowsill is performing feats of molecular engineering that would make our most advanced laboratories envious. Each leaf is not just a simple green surface, but a sophisticated biological solar panel containing millions of microscopic factories, each one humming with activity, even in the softest moonlight. The elegance of photosynthesis becomes even more remarkable when we consider its evolutionary journey. This process didn't appear fully formed. It evolved over billions of years, refined by countless generations of organisms, each one building upon the innovations of its predecessors. The first photosynthetic organisms were simple bacteria floating in ancient seas, but they carried within their microscopic bodies the seeds of every forest, every flower, every blade of grass that would ever exist. These early pioneers faced a world utterly unlike our own. The atmosphere was thick with methane and hydrogen sulfide, the oceans were murky with dissolved iron, and the sun's radiation was harsher without our protective ozone layer. Yet somehow, these tiny organisms learned to capture light and use it to build complex molecules from simple ingredients. It was perhaps the most important invention in the history of life, more transformative than fire, more revolutionary than the wheel. What's particularly soothing to contemplate is how photosynthesis operates with such quiet confidence. There's no rushing, no urgency, just the steady, patient work of molecular machinery that has been perfected over eons. A leaf doesn't worry about efficiency targets or production quotas. It simply absorbs whatever light is available and makes the most of it, whether it's the brilliant sunshine of a summer afternoon or the gentle glow filtering through clouds on an overcast day. This adaptability extends to every level of the process. When light is abundant, plants can afford to be somewhat wasteful, allowing excess energy to dissipate harmlessly as heat or fluorescence, that subtle glow you sometimes see from leaves under certain lighting conditions. When light is scarce, they become remarkably efficient, adjusting their molecular antennae to capture even the faintest photons. The pigments involved in photosynthesis tell their own fascinating story. While chlorophyll gets most of the attention with its distinctive green color, plants actually use a whole palette of light-harvesting molecules. Carotenoids provide the yellows and oranges you see in autumn leaves, but they're present year-round, usually hidden by the abundance of green chlorophyll. These accessory pigments don't just provide color, they expand the range of light wavelengths that plants can use for photosynthesis and protect the delicate photosynthetic machinery from damage by excess light. Some plants have evolved even more exotic pigments. Red algae use phycobilins to capture blue and green light in the depths of the ocean, where red light has already been absorbed by the water above. These algae appear red because they reflect the red light they cannot use, but they're actually masters at harvesting the blue-green light that penetrates to their underwater realm. The molecular architecture that supports photosynthesis is equally impressive. Chloroplasts, those tiny green organelles where photosynthesis occurs, are actually descendants of ancient bacteria that took up residence inside early plant cells billions of years ago. This partnership was so successful that the bacteria gradually gave up their independence, becoming permanent residents that could no longer survive on their own. This ancient alliance means that every plant cell contains what are essentially domesticated bacteria, working tirelessly to convert sunlight into usable energy. These chloroplasts have their own DNA, their own ribosomes for making proteins, and they even reproduce independently of the cell that houses them. In many ways, a plant is really a community of organisms working together, the plant cell providing structure and protection, the chloroplasts providing energy through photosynthesis. The membranes inside chloroplasts are arranged with exquisite precision. The thylakoids, those coin-like structures we mentioned earlier, are stacked and organized to maximize their surface area while maintaining the exact spacing needed for efficient energy transfer. The arrangement is so precise that if you could somehow unfold all the membranes in a single chloroplast, they would cover an area many times larger than the chloroplast itself. This membrane organization is crucial because photosynthesis depends on the precise positioning of molecules. The chlorophyll molecules that capture light are embedded in these membranes alongside dozens of other proteins and cofactors, each positioned exactly where it needs to be for optimal function. It's like a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle, where every piece must fit perfectly, and the puzzle is assembled and disassembled thousands of times per second as photosynthesis proceeds. The water molecules that provide the raw material for photosynthesis arrive at these molecular factories through an elegant transportation system. Water absorbed by plant roots travels up through the stem in specialized vessels, driven by the evaporation of water from leaves, that transpiration process we touched on earlier. This creates a continuous column of water stretching from the soil to the highest leaves, a hydraulic system that operates entirely through the physics of cohesion and surface tension. What's remarkable is that this water column can extend hundreds of feet in tall trees, yet it rarely breaks despite the enormous tensions involved. The water molecules cling to each other with sufficient strength to support the weight of the entire column, pulled upward by the gentle but persistent force of evaporation from leaf surfaces. It's a system so elegant that engineers study it to design more efficient pumps and fluid transport systems. When water molecules finally reach the chloroplasts, they encounter one of the most sophisticated chemical machines in existence, the oxygen evolving complex. This molecular assembly has the seemingly impossible task of splitting water molecules, breaking apart one of the most stable chemical bonds in nature, and doing it under gentle conditions at room temperature. The process requires 4 photons of light energy working in concert, a molecular choreography so complex that scientists are still working out all the details. The oxygen evolving complex accumulates energy from 4 separate light absorption events, storing it in a cluster of metal atoms until there's enough energy to split 2 water molecules and release 1 molecule of oxygen gas. This oxygen release is perhaps the most generous gift in the biological world. Plants don't need the oxygen they produce. In fact, oxygen can be somewhat problematic for them because it interferes with some of their enzymes. Yet they release it freely into the atmosphere, where it becomes available for all the oxygen-breathing organisms on Earth. Every breath you take is a gift from photosynthesis, freely given without expectation of return. The timing of this gift is worth pondering as you settle deeper into relaxation. The oxygen you're breathing right now might have been released by photosynthesis just moments ago, or it might have been produced months or even years ago and has been cycling through the atmosphere ever since. Some of the oxygen molecules entering your lungs have certainly been breathed by countless other organisms, plants, animals, bacteria, connecting you through the simple act of respiration to the entire web of life on Earth. This connection extends beyond just oxygen. The carbon atoms in the carbon dioxide you exhale will likely be captured by plants and incorporated into their tissues through photosynthesis. Some of those carbon atoms might become part of a tree trunk, others might be used to build proteins in a blade of grass, and still others might be stored as starch in a potato growing quietly underground. In this way, every breath you take participates in the grand cycling of matter that connects all living things. The carbon cycle driven by photosynthesis operates on multiple timescales simultaneously. Some carbon atoms are cycled quickly absorbed by a plant in the morning, incorporated into a sugar molecule, broken down for energy that afternoon, and released back to the atmosphere as carbon dioxide by evening. Other carbon atoms get locked away for decades in the wood of trees, or for centuries in the organic matter of soil, or even for millions of years in fossil deposits. This temporal complexity means that the carbon atoms in your body have their own stories to tell. Some might have been part of a dinosaur millions of years ago, others might have been dissolved in ancient oceans, and still others might have cycled through countless plants and animals before becoming part of you. The carbon cycle connects not just different organisms, but different time periods, weaving the history of life into the very atoms that make up living things. The energy transformations involved in photosynthesis are equally remarkable to contemplate. The sunlight striking a leaf began its journey as nuclear fusion in the core of the sun, where hydrogen atoms are crushed together under tremendous pressure and temperature to form helium, releasing energy in the process. This energy radiates outward from the sun's core, taking thousands of years to reach the surface, then speeds across 93 million miles of space in just 8 minutes to reach Earth. When this ancient sunlight finally encounters a leaf, it gets captured by chlorophyll molecules and begins a new phase of its journey. The light energy gets converted into chemical energy, stored in the bonds of sugar molecules that might persist for hours, days, or even years before being released again. In this way, photosynthesis allows plants to capture and store sunlight, banking solar energy for use when the sun isn't shining. This energy storage is what makes complex life possible. Without photosynthesis, organisms would need to find energy sources immediately as they needed them. The ability to store solar energy in chemical bonds allows for the accumulation of energy over time, enabling the construction of large, complex organisms and the development of elaborate ecosystems. The glucose molecules produced by photosynthesis are like tiny batteries, each one containing a precise amount of stored solar energy. Plants can use these molecular batteries immediately, breaking them down to power their cellular processes, or they can link them together into larger molecules for longer-term storage. Starch, the storage form of glucose in plants, can accumulate in roots, stems, and seeds, providing energy reserves that can last through winter or periods of drought. Some plants have become masters of energy storage. A single potato is essentially a concentrated repository of solar energy, captured through photosynthesis and stored as starch. The energy in that potato ultimately came from sunlight that fell on potato leaves, was captured by chlorophyll, and transformed through the elegant chemistry of photosynthesis into a form that can nourish other organisms. This transformation of light into chemical energy represents one of the most efficient energy conversion processes in nature. The best artificial solar panels can convert about 20 to 25% of sunlight into electricity, but photosynthesis, while more complex in its energy transformations, achieves remarkable efficiency when you consider that it's simultaneously powering plant growth, producing oxygen, removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and creating the organic molecules that form the foundation of food webs. The efficiency becomes even more impressive when you consider the conditions under which photosynthesis operates. Unlike artificial solar panels, which work best under ideal conditions, photosynthesis functions across an enormous range of environments, from the intense sunlight of deserts to the dim light filtering through forest canopies, from the frigid conditions of Arctic tundra to the steamy heat of tropical rainforests. Plants have evolved countless strategies for optimizing photosynthesis under different conditions. In low-light environments, they invest more resources in building light harvesting complexes, creating larger molecular antennae to capture whatever photons are available. In high-light conditions, they develop protective mechanisms to prevent damage from excess energy, including specialized molecules that dissipate excess light energy as harmless heat. The leaves themselves are marvels of engineering, with their shape, size, orientation, and internal structure all optimized for photosynthetic efficiency. The waxy coating on many leaves helps prevent water loss while allowing light to penetrate. The arrangement of cells within the leaf creates air spaces that facilitate the movement of carbon dioxide and oxygen. Even the pattern of veins in a leaf is optimized to transport water and nutrients while providing structural support. As you lie there in the gentle darkness, perhaps you can imagine the quiet industry happening all around you. Every plant within miles of your location is engaged in this ancient process, transforming the remnants of today's sunlight into the chemical bonds that will fuel tomorrow's growth. The process continues even in darkness, as plants use their stored energy to power the cellular activities that keep them alive and growing. The thought of this quiet, persistent activity can be deeply comforting. While you rest, the natural world continues its patient work of transformation and renewal. Plants are slowly converting atmospheric carbon into living tissue, releasing oxygen for you to breathe, and preparing for another day of capturing sunlight. There's something profoundly reassuring about being part of a world where such fundamental processes continue without fanfare or interruption, simply because that's what life does. It persists, adapts, and finds ways to transform simple ingredients into complex beauty. The story of photosynthesis becomes even more fascinating when we consider the incredible diversity of organisms that have mastered this art. While we often think of towering trees and garden flowers as the champions of photosynthesis, some of the most prolific practitioners are microscopic beings floating invisibly in our oceans and lakes. Phytoplankton, those tiny drifting organisms whose name literally means wandering plants, are responsible for roughly half of all the oxygen production on Earth. These microscopic marvels, many no larger than a speck of dust, collectively outperform all the world's forests combined. A single drop of seawater might contain thousands of these tiny solar-powered organisms, each one busily converting sunlight and dissolved carbon dioxide into the organic molecules that form the base of marine food webs. The diversity among these microscopic photosynthesizers is staggering. Some, like diatoms, live inside intricate glass houses made of silica, creating geometric patterns so beautiful they've been used as test objects for microscopes since the Victorian era. Others, like coccolithophores, surround themselves with delicate calcium carbonate plates that give them the appearance of microscopic flowers. When these organisms die, their remains drift to the ocean floor, gradually forming the chalk cliffs and limestone formations we see around the world. What's particularly remarkable is how these tiny organisms have adapted photosynthesis to work in the aquatic environment. Water absorbs different wavelengths of light at different rates. Red light disappears within the first few meters, while blue light can penetrate much deeper. Marine photosynthetic organisms have evolved pigments specifically tuned to capture the blue and green wavelengths that penetrate deepest into their watery world. Some have taken this adaptation to extraordinary lengths. In the deepest parts of the ocean where photosynthesis can still occur, organisms have developed pigments so efficient at capturing faint light that they can photosynthesize using illumination so dim it would be invisible to human eyes. These organisms exist at the very edge of possibility, where the boundary between light and darkness becomes blurred. The seasonal cycles of phytoplankton blooms create some of the most spectacular displays of photosynthesis on Earth. When conditions are right, usually in spring when nutrients from deep water mix with increasing sunlight, these microscopic organisms multiply explosively. Satellite images reveal blooms stretching across thousands of square miles, turning entire ocean basins into swirling patterns of green, blue, and turquoise as billions of tiny photosynthetic organisms color the water with their pigments. These blooms are more than just beautiful, they're massive carbon-capturing events. During a single bloom, phytoplankton can remove enormous quantities of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, temporarily altering the chemistry of both the ocean and the air above it. Some of this carbon gets incorporated into the organisms themselves, some gets consumed by marine animals, and some eventually sinks to the deep ocean, effectively removing it from the atmosphere for centuries or millennia. But let's drift back toward land, where photosynthesis takes on forms both familiar and surprising. Consider the humble moss growing on your garden wall or the bark of trees. These small, often overlooked plants are photosynthetic pioneers, capable of thriving in conditions that would challenge larger plants. They can photosynthesize when wet and enter a kind of suspended animation when dry, waiting patiently for the next rain shower to resume their quiet work. Mosses represent one of the earliest solutions to the challenge of photosynthesis on land. They lack the complex vascular systems of trees and flowers, so they must absorb water directly through their surfaces. This limits their size but gives them remarkable resilience. A patch of moss can survive complete dehydration, looking utterly lifeless. then spring back to vibrant green activity within minutes of being moistened. The lichens we mentioned earlier represent perhaps the most creative approach to photosynthesis. These remarkable organisms are actually partnerships between fungi and photosynthetic algae or bacteria, living together so intimately that they function as a single organism. The fungal partner provides structure, protection, and water absorption, while the photosynthetic partner provides food through the ancient alchemy of turning sunlight into sugar. This partnership allows lichens to colonize some of the harshest environments on Earth. They grow on bare rock faces in deserts, on tombstones in cemeteries, on tree bark in polluted cities, and even in the Arctic tundra where they form colorful carpets across the landscape. Some lichens grow so slowly that individual organisms can be hundreds or even thousands of years old, quietly photosynthesizing through centuries of changing seasons. The process of photosynthesis in lichens often proceeds at an almost imperceptibly slow pace, especially in harsh environments. These organisms might photosynthesize for only a few hours per year, when conditions are just right, when there's adequate moisture, sufficient light, and temperatures within their narrow range of tolerance. Yet this patient approach to energy capture has allowed them to persist in places where no other complex organisms can survive. Moving from these hardy pioneers to the lush world of tropical forests, we encounter photosynthesis in its most exuberant forms. Rainforests represent the pinnacle of photosynthetic abundance, where multiple layers of leaves create complex three-dimensional solar collectors. The canopy of a mature rainforest can intercept nearly all available sunlight, creating a dim, green-filtered world on the forest floor below. In these multi-layered ecosystems, different plants have evolved to capture light at different levels. The emergent trees tower above the main canopy, their leaves adapted to intense sunlight and strong winds. Below them, the main canopy forms a continuous green ceiling, while understory plants have developed large, thin leaves to maximize their ability to capture the filtered light that makes it through the canopy above. On the forest floor, plants have pushed the limits of low-light photosynthesis. Some have developed leaves so large they seem almost architectural, broad, flat surfaces designed to capture every available photon. Others have evolved specialized pigments that can harvest even the green light that filters down from above, light that most plants would consider unusable. The complexity of these forest ecosystems creates microclimates where photosynthesis operates under countless different conditions, sometimes within just a few feet of each other. A leaf at the top of the canopy might be photosynthesizing in brilliant sunshine while simultaneously being cooled by wind and struggling to conserve water. Just a few meters below, another leaf might be working with less than 1% of the available light, but enjoying stable temperatures and high humidity. Some rainforest plants have developed remarkable strategies for optimizing their photosynthetic efficiency. Certain species can actually move their leaves throughout the day, tracking the sun like biological solar panels to maximize light capture. Others have evolved leaves with specialized reflective surfaces that help direct light to the photosynthetic tissues below, essentially creating their own internal lighting systems. The epiphytes, plants that grow on other plants without parasitizing them, represent another fascinating adaptation to the challenges of photosynthesis in complex environments. These plants, which include many orchids, bromeliads, and ferns, have given up life on the ground to access the brighter light available in the forest canopy. They've evolved specialized strategies for collecting water and nutrients from the air, relying entirely on photosynthesis for their energy needs. Some epiphytes have developed water-storing tissues that allow them to survive dry periods, while others have evolved specialized scales or hairs that capture moisture from fog and rain. The tank bromeliads create their own miniature ecosystems, collecting water in their leaf bases and supporting communities of insects, frogs, and other small organisms. These plants have essentially created aerial wetlands, powered entirely by photosynthesis. As we move from the lush tropics to more arid environments, photosynthesis faces different challenges. Desert plants have evolved some of the most sophisticated modifications to the basic photosynthetic process, allowing them to capture and store solar energy while minimizing water loss. The cacti and succulents of desert regions represent masterpieces of photosynthetic adaptation. Many desert plants use that CAM photosynthesis we mentioned earlier, opening their pores to collect carbon dioxide during the cool, humid night hours, then closing them during the hot day to prevent water loss. This temporal separation of carbon dioxide collection and light energy capture requires sophisticated biochemical machinery to store the carbon dioxide in organic acids overnight and release it internally during the day when photosynthesis can proceed. The result is a plant that can photosynthesize effectively while losing remarkably little water. A cactus might lose only a tiny fraction of the water that a typical forest plant would lose while producing the same amount of organic matter. This efficiency allows these plants to thrive in environments where water is so scarce that most other plants simply cannot survive. The leaves of desert plants often show remarkable adaptations for managing the intense sunlight of their environments. Some have waxy, reflective surfaces that bounce back excess light, preventing overheating while still allowing sufficient light for photosynthesis. Others have developed specialized leaf shapes that create their own shade, reducing the light intensity on their photosynthetic surfaces during the hottest parts of the day. Some desert plants have taken the ultimate approach to water conservation by eliminating leaves entirely and moving their photosynthetic machinery into their stems. The green stems of cacti and many other desert plants are essentially modified leaves, optimized for photosynthesis, while minimizing surface area and water loss. These plants have restructured their entire architecture around the requirements of efficient photosynthesis in water-limited environments. The spines of cacti, far from being mere defensive structures, often play important roles in the plant's photosynthetic strategy. They can provide shade for the photosynthetic stem tissues, create air currents that help with cooling, and even collect moisture from fog and dew, channeling it down to the plant's roots. In this way, even the defensive structures of these plants contribute to their overall photosynthetic efficiency. Moving from the extremes of desert environments to the gentle rhythms of temperate regions, we find photosynthesis adapting to the challenges of seasonal change. Deciduous trees, those patient giants that shed their leaves each autumn, have evolved a strategy that balances the costs and benefits of maintaining photosynthetic machinery through changing seasons. The autumn colors that paint temperate forests each year tell the story of photosynthesis winding down for winter. As daylight hours shorten and temperatures drop, trees begin to withdraw resources from their leaves. The green chlorophyll that has masked other pigments all summer begins to break down, revealing the yellows of carotenoids and the reds and purples of anthocyanins that were there all along. But this isn't just a passive process. Trees actively dismantle their photosynthetic machinery before dropping their leaves, recovering valuable nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus that were invested in chlorophyll and other photosynthetic proteins. These nutrients are transported to the tree's permanent tissues, the roots, trunk, and branches, where they can be stored through winter and reused when new leaves emerge in spring. This seasonal cycle represents one of the most dramatic examples of photosynthetic adaptation to environmental change. Each autumn, temperate forests essentially shut down their primary production, storing energy in wood, roots, and specialized storage tissues to survive the months when photosynthesis is impossible. Then, each spring, they rebuild their entire photosynthetic apparatus from scratch, unfurling millions of new leaves optimized for capturing the increasing sunlight of the growing season. The timing of this cycle is critical. Trees must balance the benefits of extending their growing season against the costs of potential damage from early or late frosts. Different species have evolved different strategies. Some, like aspens, leaf out early and risk occasional frost damage in exchange for a longer growing season, while others, like oaks, wait for more reliable warm weather before investing energy in new leaves. Even evergreen trees, those patient conifers that maintain their needles year-round, show sophisticated adaptations to seasonal change. Their needle-shaped leaves are optimized for photosynthesis. Under challenging conditions, they have thick, waxy coatings to prevent water loss, specialized internal structures to prevent freezing damage, and pigment systems that can function at low temperatures. During winter, evergreen trees essentially put their photosynthesis into slow motion. The process continues, but at a much reduced rate, just enough to maintain basic cellular functions while minimizing the risk of damage from freezing or excessive light. When spring arrives, these trees can quickly ramp up their photosynthetic activity, giving them an advantage over deciduous species that must first invest energy in growing new leaves. The needle shape itself is a compromise between maximizing surface area for light capture and minimizing surface area for water loss. The cylindrical form of most conifer needles provides a favorable surface to volume ratio while creating internal air spaces that facilitate gas exchange. The arrangement of needles on branches is often precisely organized to minimize shading between needles, while maximizing the overall light capturing capacity of each branch. Some conifers have evolved even more specialized adaptations. The waxy coating on pine needles, for example, can be so thick that it gives the needles a blue or silver appearance. This coating not only prevents water loss but also reflects excess light during the summer months when photosynthetic capacity might otherwise be overwhelmed by intense sunlight. The story of photosynthesis in aquatic environments adds another layer of complexity to our understanding of this process. Submerged aquatic plants face unique challenges. They must capture light that has been filtered and scattered by water, obtain carbon dioxide that is dissolved in water rather than freely available in air, and manage their gas exchange through a liquid medium. Many aquatic plants have evolved thin, finely divided leaves that maximize their surface area while minimizing the diffusion distance for gases and nutrients. These feathery underwater leaves often look completely different from the aerial leaves of the same plant species, reflecting the different requirements for photosynthesis in water versus air. Some aquatic plants have developed specialized strategies for concentrating carbon dioxide around their photosynthetic machinery. Since carbon dioxide diffuses much more slowly in water than in air, these plants have evolved biochemical pumps that can extract dissolved carbon dioxide from the surrounding water and concentrate it in their photosynthetic cells. This allows them to achieve photosynthetic rates comparable to terrestrial plants despite the challenges of their aquatic environment. The floating leaves of water lilies represent another elegant solution to aquatic photosynthesis. These plants root in the muddy bottom of ponds and lakes, but send their photosynthetic leaves to the surface where they can access both abundant light and atmospheric carbon dioxide. The large, flat leaves float on the surface like natural solar panels, often covering significant portions of a pond's surface area. The stems that connect these floating leaves to their underwater roots face unique engineering challenges. They must be strong enough to resist water currents and the movement of the floating leaves, flexible enough to accommodate changes in water level, and hollow enough to transport gases between the underwater roots and the surface leaves. Many aquatic plants have evolved specialized tissues filled with air spaces that serve both as flotation devices and as gas transport systems. As we drift deeper into our exploration of photosynthesis, it's worth pausing to consider the sheer antiquity of this process. The basic machinery of photosynthesis evolved billions of years ago, long before there were any complex plants or animals on Earth. The earliest photosynthetic organisms were simple bacteria floating in ancient oceans, but they carried within their microscopic cells the same fundamental processes that power the redwood forests and prairie grasslands of today. These ancient bacterial pioneers faced a world utterly different from our own. The atmosphere contained virtually no oxygen, the seas were rich with dissolved iron and other metals, and the sun's radiation was both harsher and filtered by different atmospheric gases. Yet somehow, these tiny organisms developed the ability to capture light energy and use it to build complex organic molecules from simple inorganic ingredients. The evolution of photosynthesis was not a single event, but a gradual process of refinement that took place over hundreds of millions of years. Early photosynthetic systems were probably much less efficient than modern ones, and they may have used different raw materials and produced different end products. Some ancient bacteria used hydrogen sulfide instead of water as their source of electrons, producing sulfur instead of oxygen as a waste product. The development of oxygen-producing photosynthesis, the type that dominates our world today, was a revolutionary breakthrough that changed the chemistry of the entire planet. As we discussed earlier, this led to the Great Oxygenation event, but it's worth reflecting on just how dramatic this transformation was. The rise of atmospheric oxygen didn't just change the air, it changed the oceans, the soils, the rocks, and ultimately the entire trajectory of life on Earth. The oxygen produced by early photosynthetic organisms initially combined with dissolved iron in the oceans, creating the banded iron formations that we can still see in ancient rocks today. Only after all the iron had been oxidized could oxygen begin to accumulate in the atmosphere. This process took hundreds of millions of years, a timescale so vast that it's difficult for human minds to comprehend. Yet throughout this immense span of time, the basic process of photosynthesis continued, refined by evolution but never fundamentally changed. The chlorophyll molecules capturing sunlight in a modern leaf use, essentially the same chemistry that was invented by ancient bacteria billions of years ago. The process of splitting water molecules and releasing oxygen operates by the same principles today as it did when oxygen first began to accumulate in Earth's atmosphere. This continuity across deep time is one of the most profound aspects of photosynthesis. Every plant on Earth today carries within its cells the molecular machinery that was invented by organisms so ancient they predate not just human civilization, but complex multicellular life itself. When you look at a tree, you're seeing the latest expression of innovations that were already ancient when the first animals began to move through primordial seas. The stability of the photosynthetic process across geological time suggests something important about its fundamental efficiency and elegance. Evolution has had billions of years to modify or replace photosynthesis. Yet the basic process remains remarkably similar across all photosynthetic organisms. This suggests that photosynthesis represents something close to an optimal solution to the challenge of capturing and converting solar energy under Earth's conditions. Modern research continues to reveal new details about the sophistication of photosynthetic systems. Scientists have discovered that the efficiency of energy transfer in photosynthetic complexes approaches theoretical limits, with some processes operating at nearly 100% efficiency. The precise arrangement of pigment molecules, the exact spacing between different components, and the timing of electron transfer reactions have all been optimized by evolution to a degree that human engineers are only beginning to appreciate. Some aspects of photosynthesis even appear to utilize quantum mechanical effects that were only recently understood by physicists. The way energy moves through the light harvesting complexes of photosynthetic organisms seems to involve quantum coherence, a phenomenon where energy can simultaneously explore multiple pathways before settling on the most efficient route. This allows photosynthetic systems to achieve remarkable efficiency even under varying light conditions. These quantum effects operate at the intersection between the classical world we experience and the quantum world that governs atomic and molecular behavior. In a sense, every leaf is a biological quantum computer, using the strange properties of quantum mechanics to solve the complex optimization problem of converting light energy into chemical energy with maximum efficiency. The implications of this quantum efficiency extend beyond biology into the realm of human technology. Engineers studying photosynthesis are developing artificial systems that mimic the quantum effects found in natural photosynthetic complexes. These biomimetic approaches might eventually lead to artificial photosynthesis systems that can convert sunlight into useful chemicals with unprecedented efficiency. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of photosynthesis from a quantum perspective is how it manages to maintain quantum coherence in the warm, noisy environment of a living cell. Quantum effects typically require extremely cold temperatures and perfect isolation from environmental disturbances. Yet photosynthetic organisms achieve quantum efficiency at room temperature in the presence of molecular vibrations, thermal fluctuations, and chemical reactions. This suggests that evolution has not only optimized the chemistry of photosynthesis, but has also solved some of the most challenging problems in quantum engineering. The molecular scaffolding that holds photosynthetic complexes together is precisely tuned to maintain the delicate quantum states needed for efficient energy transfer, while protecting them from environmental disturbances that would otherwise destroy quantum coherence in microseconds. As you lie there contemplating these molecular marvels, consider that quantum effects are operating right now in any plant within your view. The houseplant on your windowsill, the tree outside your window, even the algae growing in a nearby pond, all are utilizing quantum mechanics to convert sunlight into the chemical energy that powers their growth and, ultimately, supports the entire web of life on Earth. The marriage of quantum physics and biology in photosynthesis represents one of nature's most elegant solutions to a fundamental problem: how to capture and convert energy with maximum efficiency while operating under the constraints of a living system. It's a reminder that the natural world operates according to physical principles that we're only beginning to understand, and that even the most familiar biological processes can reveal profound depths of complexity and beauty when examined closely. This quantum dimension of photosynthesis adds yet another layer to the wonder of this process. Not only does photosynthesis connect the biological world to the physical world through its capture of light energy, but it also bridges the gap between classical biology and the strange realm of quantum mechanics. In doing so, it reveals that life itself is far more sophisticated and interconnected than we might have imagined, operating at the very frontiers of what physics tells us is possible. As we near the end of this gentle exploration, it's worth reflecting on how photosynthesis connects us not just to the plants around us, but to the entire cosmos. The energy captured by photosynthesis ultimately derives from nuclear fusion reactions in the core of the Sun, reactions that convert matter into energy according to Einstein's famous equation. This energy radiates outward from the Sun, travels across the vacuum of space, and arrives at Earth as the electromagnetic radiation we call sunlight. When a plant captures this sunlight and converts it into chemical energy, it's essentially completing a chain of energy transformations that began in the nuclear furnace of our nearest star. The carbon dioxide that plants use in photosynthesis contains carbon atoms that were forged in the cores of ancient stars, while the water they split contains hydrogen atoms that date back to the formation of the universe itself. In this way, photosynthesis connects life on Earth to the deepest processes of cosmic evolution. Every sugar molecule produced by photosynthesis contains energy that originated in nuclear fusion and matter that was created in stellar cores. We are, quite literally, made of star stuff, and photosynthesis is the process that transforms this stellar material into the molecules of life. This cosmic perspective on photosynthesis can be deeply comforting as you settle into sleep. You are part of a process that connects you to the entire universe, to the sun that provides energy, to the ancient stars that created the elements in your body, and to the billions of years of evolution that have refined the elegant chemistry of life. The breath you take as you drift toward dreams contains oxygen that was liberated from water molecules by photosynthesis, connecting you to every plant on Earth and to the cosmic processes that make life possible. The story of photosynthesis is far from over. As climate change and environmental challenges reshape our world, understanding photosynthesis becomes increasingly important for humanity's future. Scientists and engineers are working to develop artificial photosynthesis systems that could help capture carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, produce clean fuels from sunlight and water, and perhaps even support human life on other planets. But even as we work to understand and harness photosynthesis, the natural process continues its patient work all around us. Plants will continue to capture sunlight, split water molecules, and release oxygen regardless of our human activities. They will continue to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, produce the organic molecules that feed ecosystems, and maintain the delicate balance of gases that makes our planet habitable. There's something profoundly reassuring about this continuity. As you close your eyes and let sleep approach, you can take comfort in knowing that photosynthesis will continue through the night and into tomorrow, quietly maintaining the chemical conditions that make life possible, patiently converting sunlight into the molecular foundations of the living world. The plants outside your window will greet tomorrow's sunrise with the same elegant efficiency they've maintained for billions of years, ready once again to perform the ancient alchemy of turning light into life. And in that quiet persistence, in that unwavering dedication to the fundamental chemistry of existence, there's a lesson about resilience, patience, and the profound interconnectedness of all things. Sweet dreams, fellow traveler in this cosmos of light and life. The gentle persistence of photosynthesis becomes even more remarkable when we consider how this process adapts to the rhythm of seasons and the passage of time. As you lie there in the quiet darkness, perhaps you can sense the subtle changes happening in the world around you, the way plants respond to the lengthening or shortening of days, the gradual shift in temperature, the slow dance between light and shadow that marks the turning of seasons. Plants are exquisite timekeepers, more precise than many clocks. They sense the gradual changes in daylight hours with remarkable accuracy, adjusting their photosynthetic machinery accordingly. As autumn approaches in temperate regions, trees begin to prepare for the lean months ahead. They start to withdraw the valuable nutrients from their leaves, nitrogen, phosphorus, and other elements that were invested in the complex molecular machinery of photosynthesis. This withdrawal is what creates the spectacular colors of autumn. The green chlorophyll that has dominated all summer begins to break down, revealing the golden carotenoids and vibrant anthocyanins that were there all along, hidden beneath chlorophyll's overwhelming presence. It's rather like watching a master painter reveal layers of color that were carefully planned from the beginning, each pigment waiting for its moment to shine. But this isn't just about beauty, though. The beauty is undeniable. It's about efficiency and survival. The tree is essentially dismantling its photosynthetic factories and storing the valuable components for reuse when spring returns. Nothing is wasted. The nutrients that powered summer's growth are carefully packaged and transported to the roots, the trunk, the permanent structures that will weather the winter months. Some trees take this resource management to extraordinary lengths. Before dropping their leaves, they can recover up to 90% of the nitrogen that was invested in photosynthetic proteins. It's a level of recycling efficiency that would make any environmental engineer envious. The leaf that falls to the forest floor has been thoroughly ransacked of its valuable components, leaving behind mostly structural materials that will slowly decompose and return their remaining nutrients to the soil. This seasonal dismantling and rebuilding of photosynthetic machinery represents one of nature's most impressive feats of molecular engineering. Each spring, deciduous trees must reconstruct their entire photosynthetic apparatus from scratch. Millions of new leaves unfurl, each one containing thousands of chloroplasts. Each chloroplast containing the intricate membrane systems and molecular machinery needed to capture and convert sunlight. The timing of this renewal is critical. Leaf out too early, and late frosts might destroy the tender new foliage. Leaf out too late, and the tree loses precious weeks of the growing season. Different species have evolved different strategies for navigating this timing challenge. Some, like the early blooming maples, take calculated risks, betting that warm spells will continue. Others, like the cautious oaks, wait for more reliable signs that winter has truly ended. The cues that plants use to time these seasonal changes are surprisingly sophisticated. Day length, temperature patterns, soil moisture, even subtle changes in light quality. All of these environmental signals are integrated by plant cells to determine the optimal timing for leaf emergence, flowering, and senescence. It's a kind of environmental calculus, performed without conscious thought but with remarkable precision. Evergreen trees face different challenges but show equal sophistication in their seasonal adaptations. Their needle-shaped leaves are marvels of compromise, engineering thick enough to withstand freezing temperatures, waxy enough to prevent excessive water loss, yet still capable of efficient photosynthesis when conditions allow. During the depths of winter, photosynthesis in evergreens slows to a crawl but never stops entirely. These hardy trees essentially put their metabolism into a kind of suspended animation during the coldest months. Photosynthesis continues, but at just enough rate to maintain basic cellular functions. It's rather like a plant version of hibernation, not the complete shutdown that some animals undergo, but a dramatic slowing of life processes that allows survival through harsh conditions. The molecular machinery that enables this winter photosynthesis is quite remarkable. Special proteins protect the delicate photosynthetic complexes from damage caused by freezing temperatures. Antifreeze compounds prevent ice crystals from forming inside cells. Specialized pigments help dissipate excess light energy that could otherwise cause damage when photosynthesis is operating at reduced capacity. Some evergreens have evolved even more sophisticated cold weather adaptations. Certain pine species can actually change the composition of their cell membranes as temperatures drop, making them more flexible and less likely to be damaged by freezing. Others produce specialized compounds that act as natural antifreeze, allowing cellular processes to continue even when temperatures drop well below the normal freezing point of water. The needles themselves show remarkable structural adaptations to their year-round role. Their cylindrical shape minimizes surface area while maximizing volume, reducing water loss while maintaining adequate space for photosynthetic machinery. The thick, waxy coating that covers most conifer needles can be so substantial that it gives the trees their characteristic blue-green or silver-green appearance, reflecting excess light while preventing water loss. Even the arrangement of needles on branches follows principles that optimize photosynthetic efficiency. The spiral patterns common in many conifers ensure that each needle receives adequate light exposure while minimizing shading of neighboring needles. Some species can actually adjust the angle of their needles throughout the day, tracking the sun's movement to maximize light capture. Moving from the seasonal rhythms of temperate forests to the consistent warmth of tropical regions, we find photosynthesis operating under different but equally fascinating constraints. In the tropics, where temperature and daylight hours remain relatively constant throughout the year, plants must deal with other challenges: intense competition for light, extreme humidity, and the need to photosynthesize efficiently under a complex canopy that filters and scatters sunlight in intricate patterns. Tropical rainforests represent perhaps the ultimate expression of photosynthetic diversity and efficiency. These ecosystems capture and utilize light with such thoroughness that very little reaches the forest floor. The canopy itself is structured in multiple layers, each one optimized for photosynthesis under specific light conditions. Emergent trees tower above the main canopy, their leaves adapted to intense sunlight and strong winds. Below them, the continuous canopy forms a green ceiling that intercepts most of the remaining light. In the understory, plants have pushed the boundaries of low-light photosynthesis to their limits. Some have evolved leaves so large they seem almost architectural, broad, flat surfaces designed to capture every available photon. Others have developed specialized pigments that can harvest even the green light that most plants would consider unusable, the light that filters down through the layers of leaves above. The forest floor presents the ultimate challenge for photosynthetic organisms. Here, light levels can be less than 1% of what's available above the canopy. The plants that thrive in these conditions have evolved remarkable adaptations, ultra-efficient, light-harvesting complexes, specialized pigments, and metabolic strategies that allow them to survive on the photosynthetic equivalent of scraps. Some rainforest plants have developed the ability to rapidly adjust their photosynthetic machinery as light conditions change. When a tree falls and creates a temporary gap in the canopy, understory plants can quickly reconfigure their molecular antennae to take advantage of the sudden increase in available light. It's a kind of molecular flexibility that allows them to make the most of brief opportunities for increased photosynthesis. The epiphytes, those plants that grow on other plants without parasitizing them, represent another fascinating adaptation to the challenges of tropical photosynthesis. These aerial gardens have abandoned life on the forest floor in favor of positions higher in the canopy where light is more abundant. They've evolved specialized strategies for collecting water and nutrients from the air, relying entirely on photosynthesis for their energy needs. Some epiphytes have developed water-storing tissues that allow them to survive the dry periods that can occur even in humid rainforests. Others have evolved specialized scales or structures that capture moisture directly from fog and rain. The tank bromeliads create their own miniature aquatic ecosystems, collecting water in their leaf bases and supporting entire communities of insects, frogs, and other small organisms. These aerial wetlands represent one of nature's most elegant solutions to the challenge of combining efficient photosynthesis with water and nutrient acquisition. The bromeliads use photosynthesis to power their growth while simultaneously creating habitat for other organisms, which in turn provide nutrients through their waste products and decomposing remains. It's a beautiful example of how photosynthesis can serve as the foundation for complex ecological relationships. The diversity of photosynthetic strategies in tropical environments extends to the molecular level as well. Different species have evolved variations in their photosynthetic machinery that optimize performance under specific conditions. Some have developed more efficient versions of the enzymes involved in carbon fixation. Others have evolved specialized pathways for concentrating carbon dioxide around their photosynthetic machinery, improving efficiency in the hot, humid conditions of the tropics. The result is an ecosystem where photosynthesis operates with an intensity and efficiency that's hard to comprehend. A single hectare of tropical rainforest can contain more species of photosynthetic organisms than entire temperate countries. Each species represents a unique solution to the challenges of capturing and converting solar energy in this complex, competitive environment. As we shift our perspective from the lush abundance of rainforests to the stark beauty of desert environments, we encounter photosynthesis pushed to different extremes. Here, the challenge isn't competing for light, but managing the abundance of it while conserving precious water. Desert plants have evolved some of the most sophisticated modifications to basic photosynthetic processes, creating systems that can operate efficiently under conditions that would quickly kill most other plants. The cacti and succulents that dominate many desert landscapes represent masterpieces of photosynthetic adaptation. Their thick, waxy stems have taken over the photosynthetic role typically played by leaves, creating systems that can capture and convert sunlight while losing remarkably little water. The familiar barrel shape of many cacti isn't just aesthetically pleasing, it's a carefully optimized form that maximizes the volume available for water storage while minimizing the surface area exposed to the drying desert air. Many desert plants employ that fascinating temporal separation of photosynthetic processes we touched on earlier, CAM photosynthesis. These plants open their pores to collect carbon dioxide during the cool, humid night hours, storing it in organic acids within their cells. During the scorching day, when most plants would lose dangerous amounts of water through their open pores, Can plants keep their pores tightly sealed and release the stored carbon dioxide internally for photosynthesis? This biochemical time shifting requires remarkable molecular coordination. The same cells that are storing carbon dioxide at night must be able to release it and use it for photosynthesis during the day. The enzymes involved in this process must be precisely regulated to ensure that carbon dioxide is stored when it's available and released when light is available for photosynthesis. The efficiency of this system is quite extraordinary. A cam plant might lose only a tiny fraction of the water that a typical forest plant would lose while producing the same amount of organic matter. Some desert plants are so efficient at water conservation that they can survive on nothing but the moisture they extract from the air, growing and photosynthesizing in environments where most organisms would quickly desiccate. The leaves of desert plants, when they have leaves at all, show remarkable adaptations for managing intense sunlight. Some have developed reflective surfaces that bounce back excess light, creating their own shade while still allowing sufficient light for photosynthesis. Others have evolved specialized leaf shapes and orientations that minimize exposure to the harsh midday sun, while maximizing light capture during the gentler hours of morning and evening. The spines of cacti, far from being mere defensive structures, often play important roles in the plant's overall photosynthetic strategy. They can create beneficial microclimates around the photosynthetic stem, reducing air temperature and increasing humidity. Some even help collect moisture from dew and fog, channeling it down to the plant's roots where it can be stored for later use. The root systems of desert plants represent another level of adaptation to their harsh environment. Some species develop extensive, shallow root systems that can quickly absorb water from brief desert rains. Others send deep taproots down to reach groundwater that might be dozens of feet below the surface. These root systems work in coordination with the photosynthetic tissues above ground, providing the water and nutrients needed to maintain photosynthesis under extreme conditions. Moving from terrestrial to aquatic environments, we encounter yet another realm of photosynthetic adaptation. Underwater photosynthesis faces unique challenges: light that has been filtered and scattered by water, carbon dioxide that must be extracted from solution rather than taken directly from air, and the need to manage gas exchange through a liquid medium rather than air. The submerged leaves of aquatic plants often look completely different from their terrestrial counterparts, reflecting the different physical constraints of their environment. Many are thin and finely divided, creating maximum surface area for gas exchange, while minimizing the distance that gases must diffuse to reach photosynthetic cells. These feathery underwater leaves flutter in water currents like living flags, their movement helping to mix the water around them and improve access to dissolved gases. Some aquatic plants have evolved specialized biochemical mechanisms for concentrating carbon dioxide around their photosynthetic machinery. Since carbon dioxide diffuses much more slowly in water than in air, these plants have developed molecular pumps that can actively extract dissolved carbon dioxide from the surrounding water and concentrate it where it's needed for photosynthesis. The floating leaves of water lilies represent an elegant compromise between aquatic and terrestrial photosynthesis. These plants root in the muddy bottom of ponds and lakes, but send their photosynthetic leaves to the surface, where they can access both abundant sunlight and atmospheric carbon dioxide. The large, flat leaves serve as natural solar collectors, often covering significant portions of a pond's surface area. The engineering challenges faced by these floating leaf plants are quite remarkable. Their stems must be strong enough to resist water currents and the movement of surface waves, flexible enough to accommodate changes in water level, and hollow enough to transport gases between the underwater roots and the surface leaves. Many aquatic plants have evolved specialized air-filled tissues that serve both as flotation devices and as internal gas transport systems. Some aquatic plants have developed the ability to perform photosynthesis both above and below the water surface, switching between different photosynthetic strategies depending on environmental conditions. During low water periods, they might function as terrestrial plants, but when water levels rise, they can quickly adapt their metabolism for underwater photosynthesis. The microscopic phytoplankton that drift through oceans and lakes represent perhaps the most numerous photosynthetic organisms on Earth. These tiny organisms, many smaller than the width of a human hair, collectively produce more oxygen than all the world's forests combined. They've adapted photosynthesis to work in the three-dimensional environment of open water, where light conditions can change rapidly as currents and weather patterns mix the water column. Many phytoplankton species can actually migrate vertically through the water column, following optimal light conditions throughout the day. Some rise toward the surface during daylight hours to maximize light capture, then sink deeper at night to access nutrients that are more abundant in deeper waters. This daily migration represents a kind of three-dimensional farming, where organisms actively position themselves to optimize both light and nutrient availability. The diversity of photosynthetic strategies among phytoplankton is staggering. Some species have evolved specialized pigments that allow them to photosynthesize efficiently in the blue-green light that penetrates deepest into ocean water. Others have developed intricate glass-like shells that help focus and concentrate the available light onto their photosynthetic machinery. Still, others have formed partnerships with bacteria, creating floating consortiums that can exploit multiple niches simultaneously. The seasonal blooms of phytoplankton that color vast areas of ocean represent some of the most spectacular displays of photosynthetic activity on Earth. When conditions are favorable, typically in spring, when deep water nutrients mix with increasing sunlight, these microscopic organisms can multiply explosively, creating blooms visible from space. These events represent massive photosynthetic factories, temporarily transforming entire ocean basins into biological solar collectors. But even as we marvel at these grand displays of photosynthetic prowess, it's worth remembering that the same fundamental processes are occurring in the most modest settings. The algae growing on your garden path, the moss on a brick wall, the tiny plants floating in a puddle after rain, all are participating in this ancient alchemy of converting sunlight into the molecules of life. Each of these humble photosynthetic organisms represents millions of years of evolutionary refinement, carrying within their cells molecular machinery of extraordinary sophistication. They may not have the grandeur of redwood forests or the spectacular colors of autumn maples, but they're performing the same essential service, capturing light energy and transforming it into the chemical bonds that power the living world. As you drift towards sleep, perhaps you can sense the quiet industry of photosynthesis happening all around you. In the darkness, plants are using stored energy from today's sunlight to power the cellular processes that keep them alive and growing. They're preparing for tomorrow's return of the sun, when they'll once again begin their patient work of turning light into life, oxygen, and the molecular foundations of existence. There's something profoundly comforting in this continuity, in the knowledge that this ancient process continues regardless of human concerns or activities. The same chemistry that powered the first photosynthetic bacteria billions of years ago continues today in every leaf, every blade of grass, every microscopic alga. It's a reminder that we're part of something much larger and more enduring than our individual lives. A planetary system of energy, capture, and transformation that has been running for eons and will continue long after we're gone. The photosynthesis happening right now, in this moment, as you settle into rest, is writing the next page in Earth's ongoing story of life. Each photon captured, each carbon dioxide molecule fixed, each oxygen molecule released, adds to the vast, interconnected web of processes that maintain our planet's habitability. And in that quiet persistence, in that unwavering dedication to the fundamental chemistry of life, there's a lesson about patience, resilience, and the profound interconnectedness of all things under the sun. In this gentle twilight of our journey through photosynthesis, let's pause for a moment to consider something rather extraordinary the way this process bridges the vast scales of existence, from the quantum realm of individual molecules to the planetary cycles that govern our entire world. As you lie there, perhaps feeling the weight of drowsiness settling over you like a warm blanket, imagine the delicate dance happening right now in the plant on your windowsill, where quantum mechanics and global ecology meet in perfect harmony. At the smallest scale, photosynthesis operates in a realm where the classical physics we experience daily gives way to the strange probabilistic world of quantum mechanics. When a photon of light strikes a chlorophyll molecule, it doesn't simply transfer its energy in the straightforward way we might expect. Instead, the energy seems to explore multiple pathways simultaneously, like a traveler who can somehow walk down several roads at once before choosing the most efficient route. This quantum behavior, known as coherence, allows photosynthetic systems to achieve remarkable efficiency in transferring energy from the light harvesting complexes to the reaction centers where chemistry actually occurs. The energy doesn't stumble randomly through the molecular maze, it flows with an almost intelligent purposefulness, finding the optimal path through quantum superposition. It's as if nature has learned to harness the most exotic properties of physics to power the most fundamental process of life. What makes this even more remarkable is that these quantum effects persist in the warm, bustling environment of a living cell. Quantum coherence typically requires the kind of pristine conditions found only in physics laboratories: ultra-cold temperatures, perfect isolation from environmental disturbances. Yet here, in the messy, vibrant world of biological systems, quantum effects flourish at room temperature amidst the constant molecular motion and chemical activity of cellular life. The implications of this discovery extend far beyond botany. Engineers and physicists are now studying photosynthetic systems to understand how nature maintains quantum coherence under conditions that should theoretically destroy it within microseconds. The molecular scaffolding that surrounds photosynthetic complexes appears to be precisely tuned to protect quantum states while still allowing the flexibility needed for efficient chemical reactions. This marriage of quantum physics and biology reveals something profound about the nature of life itself. Living systems aren't just collections of classical mechanical processes, they're quantum mechanical entities operating at the very frontier of what physics tells us is possible. Every leaf, every blade of grass, every microscopic algae is essentially a biological quantum computer, solving complex optimization problems in real time using principles that human technology is only beginning to explore. But let's step back from this quantum wonderland and consider photosynthesis from a planetary perspective. The oxygen you're breathing as you settle into rest is part of a vast atmospheric reservoir that has been shaped by billions of years of photosynthetic activity. Every molecule of oxygen in Earth's atmosphere has been through photosynthesis multiple times, cycling through the living world in patterns that span continents and centuries. The carbon cycle, driven by photosynthesis, operates on multiple timescales simultaneously. Some carbon atoms are cycled rapidly, captured by a plant in the morning, incorporated into a sugar molecule, broken down for energy that same afternoon, and released back to the atmosphere as carbon dioxide by evening. These rapid cycles power the immediate energy needs of ecosystems, supporting everything from bacterial growth to the daily activities of large mammals. Other carbon atoms follow much longer pathways. They might be incorporated into the woody tissues of trees, where they remain locked away for decades or even centuries. When these trees eventually die and decompose, or when they're harvested for human use, this carbon returns to the atmosphere, completing cycles that span human generations. The wooden beams in old buildings, the pages of antique books, even the graphite in pencils all contain carbon that was once atmospheric carbon dioxide, captured by photosynthesis and transformed into solid form. Some carbon follows even longer routes, becoming buried in sediments or incorporated into fossil deposits where it remains sequestered for millions of years. The coal, oil, and natural gas that power much of human civilization represent photosynthetic products from ancient ecosystem sunlight that was captured by plants and algae hundreds of millions of years ago, now being released back to the atmosphere through human activities. This temporal complexity means that the carbon atoms in your body tell stories that span geological time. Some might have been part of a dinosaur, others dissolved in ancient seas, still others cycling through countless generations of plants and microorganisms. The carbon cycle connects not just different organisms and ecosystems, but different eras of Earth's history, weaving the deep past into the present moment through the patient work of photosynthesis. The global impact of photosynthesis extends beyond just carbon and oxygen cycling. The water cycle, which brings rain to your garden and fills the rivers that flow past your town, is intimately connected to photosynthetic processes. When plants absorb water through their roots and release it through their leaves, that transpiration we've mentioned, they're participating in a planetary scale system that moves water from oceans to atmosphere to land and back again. A forest isn't just a collection of trees, it's a water pump, lifting millions of gallons from the soil to the atmosphere every day. The Amazon rainforest alone transpires enough water daily to supply the needs of a large city, and this water vapor travels thousands of miles before falling as rain in distant regions. When forests are cleared, these local and regional climate effects are lost, sometimes permanently altering weather patterns across vast areas. The temperature of our planet is also influenced by photosynthesis in ways both subtle and profound. Plants don't just remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, they also affect local temperatures through their transpiration and their influence on surface reflectivity. A green forest absorbs more sunlight than bare soil or rock, but the cooling effect of transpiration often more than compensates for this additional heat absorption. The seasonal cycle of photosynthesis in temperate and polar regions actually causes measurable fluctuations in atmospheric carbon dioxide concentrations. During spring and summer, when plants are actively photosynthesizing and growing, atmospheric carbon dioxide levels drop slightly. During autumn and winter, when many plants are dormant and decomposition processes continue, carbon dioxide levels rise again. These seasonal breathing cycles of the terrestrial biosphere can be detected by monitoring stations around the world, a planetary scale pulse that reflects the collective photosynthetic activity of entire continents. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of photosynthesis from a global perspective is its role in maintaining the conditions that make complex life possible. The oxygen in our atmosphere isn't just a byproduct of photosynthesis, it's what enables the kind of high-energy metabolism that powers everything from hummingbird flight to human consciousness. Without the oxygen produced by photosynthetic organisms, Earth would be a very different place, populated only by simple organisms that could extract energy from their environment without breathing. The ozone layer that protects us from harmful ultraviolet radiation exists only because photosynthesis has filled our atmosphere with oxygen. High in the stratosphere, oxygen molecules are broken apart by intense solar radiation and reformed into ozone, creating a protective shield that allows complex life to exist on land. Every time you step outside without worrying about radiation damage, you're benefiting from this photosynthetic gift that has been billions of years in the making. Even the pH of our oceans is buffered by photosynthetic processes. Marine algae and plants absorb carbon dioxide from seawater, helping to prevent the oceans from becoming too acidic. This buffering effect is crucial for maintaining the conditions that allow coral reefs, shellfish, and countless other marine organisms to build and maintain their calcium carbonate structures. The beautiful shells you might find on a beach exist because photosynthetic organisms help keep ocean chemistry within the narrow range that allows these structures to form. The stability of Earth's climate over geological time has been maintained in part by the regulatory effects of photosynthesis. When atmospheric carbon dioxide levels rise, plants typically grow faster and absorb more carbon dioxide, providing a negative feedback that tends to stabilize the system. When carbon dioxide levels drop, plant growth slows, reducing this stabilizing effect. These feedback loops aren't perfect. They operate over long timescales and can be overwhelmed by rapid changes, but they've helped keep Earth's climate within the range that allows liquid water and complex life to persist. This global regulatory role of photosynthesis extends to many other aspects of Earth's environmental systems. The nitrogen cycle, which provides the essential nutrients that all organisms need to build proteins and genetic material, is intimately connected to photosynthetic processes. Many photosynthetic organisms form partnerships with nitrogen-fixing bacteria, creating biological factories that convert atmospheric nitrogen into forms that other organisms can use. The phosphorus cycle, equally important for life, is also influenced by photosynthetic organisms. Plant roots secrete acids that help dissolve phosphorus-containing minerals in soil, making this essential nutrient available to the broader ecosystem. When these plants die and decompose, the phosphorus they've accumulated becomes available to support new generations of growth. Even the formation of clouds is influenced by photosynthetic organisms. Many plants and algae release compounds that serve as condensation nuclei, helping water vapor in the atmosphere form the droplets that eventually become clouds and precipitation. The volatile organic compounds released by forests can create the kind of atmospheric chemistry that favors cloud formation, potentially affecting local and regional weather patterns. As you sink deeper into the comfortable embrace of approaching sleep, consider that you're part of this vast, interconnected system of planetary regulation. Every breath you take participates in the global cycling of gases. Every meal you eat represents energy that was ultimately captured from sunlight by photosynthetic organisms. Every glass of water you drink has been part of countless cycles through the atmosphere, oceans, and living organisms, purified and renewed by the combined activities of the Earth system. The clothes you wear likely contain fibers that grew through photosynthesis, cotton from plants, wool from animals that ate plants, even synthetic fibers made from petroleum that represents ancient photosynthetic products. The wood in your furniture, the paper in your books, the food in your kitchen, all products of the same fundamental process that converts sunlight into the materials and energy that support human civilization. But photosynthesis doesn't just support human activities, it enables them. The stable climate, breathable atmosphere, and fertile soils that make human civilization possible all depend on the regulatory effects of photosynthetic organisms. We exist within a biosphere that has been shaped by billions of years of photosynthetic activity, and our continued prosperity depends on maintaining the health of the photosynthetic systems that keep our planet habitable. This dependence on photosynthesis becomes particularly relevant as we face the challenges of climate change and environmental degradation. The same process that has maintained Earth's habitability for billions of years is now being called upon to help address the environmental consequences of human activities. Reforestation projects, agricultural innovations, and the development of artificial photosynthesis technologies all represent attempts to harness the power of photosynthesis to solve contemporary problems. Scientists and engineers are working to develop artificial systems that mimic the efficiency of natural photosynthesis, potentially creating technologies that could produce clean fuels from sunlight and carbon dioxide. These efforts face enormous challenges. Natural photosynthesis is the product of billions of years of evolutionary refinement, and replicating its efficiency and sophistication in artificial systems is proving to be one of the most difficult challenges in modern science and engineering. Yet the potential rewards are enormous. Artificial photosynthesis systems could provide clean, renewable energy while simultaneously removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. They could produce hydrogen fuel from water using only sunlight, or create other useful chemicals from simple, abundant, raw materials. Some researchers envision artificial leaves that could be deployed on a massive scale, mimicking the carbon-capturing and oxygen-producing functions of natural forests. Even more ambitious are proposals for using photosynthetic organisms themselves as components of future technologies. Engineered algae and bacteria could be designed to produce specific chemicals or fuels while simultaneously capturing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. These biological factories could combine the efficiency of natural photosynthesis with the precision of genetic engineering, creating systems that are both highly productive and environmentally beneficial. The study of photosynthesis continues to yield new insights that could revolutionize our understanding of energy conversion, quantum mechanics, and biological design. Recent discoveries about the quantum effects in photosynthetic systems are informing the development of quantum computers and other advanced technologies. The precise molecular architectures found in chloroplasts are inspiring new approaches to materials, science, and nanotechnology. As you lie there in the gathering quiet, perhaps feeling your thoughts beginning to slow and soften like autumn leaves settling to the ground, remember that you're witnessing the end of another day, powered entirely by photosynthesis. The food you ate today, the oxygen you breathed, even the fossil fuels that may have heated your home or powered your transportation, all ultimately derive their energy from the patient work of photosynthetic organisms converting sunlight into usable form. Tomorrow's sunrise will begin another cycle of this ancient process. Plants will once again begin their quiet work of capturing light and transforming it into the chemical bonds that power life. The same molecular machinery that has sustained life on Earth for billions of years will continue its patient operation, converting sunlight into sugars, releasing oxygen into the atmosphere, and maintaining the delicate chemical balance that makes our world habitable. In this continuity, in this unwavering dedication to the fundamental chemistry of existence, there's something deeply comforting. As human activities reshape the world around us, as technologies advance and societies change, photosynthesis continues with the same quiet efficiency it has maintained since life first learned to harness the power of the sun. It's a reminder that beneath all the complexity and turbulence of the modern world, the basic processes that sustain life remain constant, reliable, and reassuringly predictable. The plants outside your window will greet tomorrow's light with the same molecular enthusiasm they've shown for millions of years. They'll capture photons, split water molecules, fix carbon dioxide, and release oxygen with the same elegant efficiency that has maintained our planet's habitability since long before humans walked the earth. And in their patient, persistent work, they'll continue writing the next chapters in the ongoing story of life powered by sunlight. Sweet dreams, fellow traveler, in this solar-powered world of ours. May your rest be as peaceful as the quiet work of photosynthesis continuing through the night, and may you wake refreshed to another day, illuminated by the ancient alchemy of turning light into life. And now, as we come to the quiet end of our gentle journey through the world of photosynthesis, let's take a moment to reflect on the profound beauty of what we've discovered together. We've traced the path of sunlight from the nuclear fires of our nearest star to the delicate molecular machinery hidden within the humblest blade of grass. We've seen how quantum mechanics and biology dance together in ways that still astonish scientists, and how the oxygen you're breathing right now connects you to billions of years of evolutionary innovation. Perhaps what's most remarkable is how photosynthesis reveals the deep interconnectedness of everything around us. The carbon atoms in your body have stories that span geological ages. Some may have been part of ancient ferns in primordial swamps. Others might have drifted through the atmosphere for millennia before being captured by the tree outside your window. The oxygen filling your lungs began its journey when water molecules were split by sunlight, releasing this life-giving gas as what plants considerately call their waste. Every breath you take connects you to every photosynthetic organism on Earth. Every meal you've ever eaten represents solar energy that was captured by plants and transformed into the sugars, proteins, and fats that nourish your body. Even the fossil fuels that power much of our modern world are simply concentrated sunshine from ancient ecosystems, photosynthetic products from forests and seas that existed hundreds of millions of years ago. But perhaps the most comforting aspect of photosynthesis is its quiet persistence. While human societies rise and change, while technologies advance and landscapes transform, this ancient process continues with unwavering dedication. The same molecular choreography that sustained the first photosynthetic bacteria continues today in every leaf, every patch of moss, every microscopic alga floating in distant seas. As you settle deeper into rest, imagine the gentle industry happening all around you right now. In the darkness, plants are using energy stored from today's sunshine to power the cellular processes that keep them alive and growing. They're preparing molecular machinery for tomorrow's return of light, when they'll once again begin their patient work of transforming photons into the chemical bonds that power virtually every ecosystem on Earth. There's something profoundly peaceful in this continuity, the knowledge that while you sleep, the natural world continues its ancient rhythms of energy capture and transformation. The houseplant on your windowsill, the trees in distant forests, the phytoplankton drifting through midnight seas, all are participating in the same fundamental process that has sustained life on our planet for billions of years and will continue long after we're gone. The story of photosynthesis reminds us that we live in a universe where the simplest ingredients, sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide, can be transformed through elegant chemistry into the complex molecules that make consciousness, creativity, and wonder possible. It's a process that bridges the gap between the physical and biological worlds, between quantum mechanics and global ecology, between the ancient past and the living present. So as your thoughts begin to drift like autumn leaves settling gently to the forest floor, remember that you're part of something much larger and more enduring than individual concerns or daily worries. You're woven into the vast solar-powered tapestry of life on Earth, connected through breath and biology to every growing thing under the sun. Tomorrow's dawn will bring another cycle of this magnificent process. Light will once again stream through windows and forest canopies, striking chlorophyll molecules with the same quantum precision that has powered life for eons. Plants will continue their quiet alchemy, turning sunshine into sustenance, maintaining the atmospheric balance that makes our world habitable, and writing the next page in Earth's ongoing story of transformation and renewal. And as you lie there in the gathering darkness, perhaps you can sense the gentle transition happening in the natural world around you. While photosynthesis may slow with a setting sun, the story doesn't end with nightfall, it simply shifts into a different, equally remarkable phase. The sugars created during today's sunlight are now flowing through plant tissues like liquid starlight, powering the quiet work of growth, repair, and preparation for tomorrow's solar harvest. In the darkness, roots are extending deeper into soil, following chemical gradients toward water and nutrients with a patience that would humble any human endeavor. Cell walls are being constructed from the glucose that was sunlight just hours ago, each molecule placed with molecular precision by enzymes that work tirelessly through the night. Seeds are developing in silent pods and fruits, each one a concentrated package of solar energy waiting for the right moment to begin its own photosynthetic journey. The night shift of plant life is every bit as sophisticated as the daylight hours, though it operates in ways we rarely consider. Plants are breathing too, in their own fashion, taking in oxygen and releasing carbon dioxide as they break down stored sugars to fuel their cellular activities. It's the mirror image of photosynthesis, a gentle respiration that continues through the dark hours, reminding us that even in stillness, life persists. Some plants have learned to make the most of these quiet hours in extraordinary ways. Night-blooming flowers unfurl their petals in the darkness, releasing fragrances that drift through the cool air to attract nocturnal pollinators. These plants have synchronized their entire existence with the rhythm of night and day, opening their molecular factories to the sun during daylight hours and their reproductive displays to the moonlit world after dark. The desert cacti we spoke of earlier are particularly active during these cooler hours. Their pores, tightly sealed against the day's heat, open like tiny windows in the darkness, to collect the carbon dioxide they'll use when morning light returns. It's a beautiful example of how life adapts to harsh conditions not by fighting against them, but by finding elegant ways to work within nature's constraints. As you drift towards sleep, consider that your own body is participating in cycles that mirror those of the plant world around you. The oxygen you're breathing was liberated from water molecules by photosynthesis, while the carbon dioxide you're exhaling will likely be captured by a plant tomorrow, beginning its transformation back into the sugars that sustain life. You're part of an ancient conversation between the living and the luminous, a dialogue conducted in the universal languages of chemistry and light. The wonder of photosynthesis extends even to the dreams that may soon visit you. The glucose flowing through your bloodstream, derived ultimately from photosynthetic processes, powers the neurons in your brain as they weave the strange, beautiful narratives we call dreams. In a very real sense, your nighttime imaginings are fueled by captured sunlight, by the patient work of chlorophyll molecules that transformed electromagnetic radiation into the chemical energy that now illuminates your sleeping mind. This connection between photosynthesis and consciousness is perhaps one of the most poetic aspects of the entire process. Every thought you've ever had, every memory you've formed, every moment of creativity or wonder, all powered by the ancient alchemy of turning light into life. The words of every poem, the notes of every song, the brushstrokes of every painting all ultimately trace back to photosynthesis, to the quiet miracle happening in leaves and algae around the world. And so, as you settle into the deep comfort of approaching sleep, know that you're cradled not just by blankets and pillows, but by the vast, interconnected web of photosynthetic life that surrounds our planet like a gentle green embrace. From the smallest moss to the mightiest forest, from floating phytoplankton to towering redwoods, countless organisms are maintaining the delicate chemistry that keeps our world habitable, breathable, beautiful. The photosynthesis that began billions of years ago in ancient seas continues tonight in every garden, every forest, every patch of grass beneath the stars. It's a process so fundamental, so essential, that it has become invisible to us, as natural as breathing, as constant as heartbeat, as reliable as sunrise. Yet in its quiet persistence lies one of the universe's most elegant solutions to the challenge of creating order from chaos, complexity from simplicity, life from light. Sweet dreams, dear listener, may your rest be as peaceful as leaves rustling in a midnight breeze, and may you wake tomorrow with a deeper appreciation for the solar-powered miracle that surrounds us all, the gentle, persistent, magnificent process we call photosynthesis. The ancient alchemy of turning sunlight into life continues even now, writing the next chapter in Earth's ongoing story of transformation, one photon at a time.